You feel the chin strap bite under your jaw as green static trembles across your goggles and the altimeter falls through 50 feet over a black Afghan field. Because somewhere below you a raid force waits while rounds snap past the cockpit and stitch sparks across metal you still need to fly home. Level 1. The Volunteer. You fly Army missions out of Fort Campbell and hate how competence feels when nothing tests it. You move pallets. You move officers. You move infantrymen to ranges where nothing happens. You log 1,200 hours in a Black Hawk before 31 and collect evaluations that should satisfy you. You hear rumors. You hear no-light flights. You hear windowless briefings. You hear the 160th flies for units the public learns about after the president speaks. You tell yourself stability matters. You call the number because boredom starts feeling like cowardice once you know a life exists. Level 2, the Breaker Course. You arrive for Green Platoon expecting aviation and find selection meant to destroy everything around aviation. You ruck 12 miles with 50 pounds, then 16, then 20, over Tennessee roads that turn your shoulders raw, your socks dark with blood. You run until breakfast comes back up. You tread water with weight plates. You sleep in 40-minute scraps while instructors write notes and never raise their voices, which feels worse than screaming because calm men with clipboards make quitting look ordinary. You expected a pilot course. You got a character autopsy. You do not ask why obstacle lanes matter. You understand by week 4 that nobody wants aviators who panic. You understand everybody wants the pilot who still decides at 0300 after 30 hours awake. Level 3. The Green World. You strap night vision goggles to your helmet and watch the Earth become a narrow green tunnel where distance lies and shadows kill. You learn terrain flight at 100 feet, then lower, with ridgelines near enough to feel personal, power lines thin enough to hide until the final second. You fly with no lights and no margin any regular Army evaluator would accept. You memorize contour lines, satellite imagery, and offset approaches until an unseen landing zone starts living inside your head like a dream. You expected to feel fearless. What you actually feel is precision sharpened by dread. You pass with a handshake, not applause, because welcome only means you earned the right to be watched harder. Level 4. The Edge of the Team Room. You start training beside Delta operators, Rangers, and Assaulters who study you like a part that might fail under pressure. You carry mission packets. You rehearse fast rope profiles. You fly Little Birds for tight urban work and MH-47s for heavy loads, then return to the MH-60 because that cockpit fits your hands. You learn that a landing zone is never just a landing zone. You learn that 10 seconds late can kill men already moving. You want trust immediately. You do not get it. You get silence until you place an aircraft where promised on 3 bad nights in a row, then hold steady while miniguns hammer darkness from both doors and brass rolls hot across the floor. You tell yourself it was repetition. You know repetitions decide who gets invited onto missions. Level 5. The First Hot LZ. You take your combat infill 3 weeks into deployment with 12 operators in the back and intelligence promising 6 men around a compound outside Mosul. You distrust that number before takeoff. You descend through goggles and catch muzzle flashes along a wall before the skids settle. Then more from a tree line, then more from rooftops nobody mentioned. You flare hard. You hold. You hear rounds hit the fuselage 3 feet from your shoulder and feel the aircraft twitch as the crew chief opens the minigun and turns darkness into burning copper. You count seconds because time on the ground is survival turned mathematical. You expected to feel cinematic. What you actually feel is administrative, like death became a checklist. You lift with blood on the deck and spend sunrise learning the target died and 1 man from aircraft is not coming home. Level 6. The Leaving Part. You discover missions are not the loudest ones. You fly offset insertions in Kunar and eastern Syria where teams walk 5, 10, sometimes 15 kilometers after you drop them into ravines that look empty until dawn reveals antennas and men with radios. You wait in dead ground with engines turning and fuel dropping while the radio stays silent too long. You check the clock. You check the fuel. You check numbers again because orders say you leave if no call comes. You leave twice in 1 month. You climb away from your own people because gauge needles refuse sentiment, and you spend the flight back hearing versions of what might be happening there. Most teams return later. One comes back with fewer voices. You tell yourself procedure saved the aircraft. Some nights you believe it. Some nights you do not. Level 7. The crash. You approach an extraction in western Iraq with visibility unlimited, which stops meaning anything the second rotor wash grabs moon dust and throws a wall of brown across the cockpit. You lose the horizon. You lose the ground. You keep the descent, because climbing half-blind that low can kill everybody faster than committing. You hear 20 feet. You hear 15. You hear 10. You hit harder than expected, catch something with the rotor arc, and the machine rolls into shattered plexiglass, harness pressure, then a silence so wrong it feels mechanical. You smell JP8. You know fire is coming. You claw free through torn metal with your leg half dead and drag one crew chief, then another, while operators spill out the back and a chem light paints the wreck. You expected terror. What you actually feel is procedure moving through pain. You spend 3 weeks hospitalized and 6 months rebuilding a fractured femur, then answer yes before the question about flying again is asked. Level 8. The name nobody says. You sit in a sealed briefing room with a scale model of a compound in Abbottabad and enough faces around the table to make the air feel classified. You rehearse for months. You memorize wall heights, roof lines, approach angles, radar gaps, fuel curves, and what to burn first if capture becomes possible. You cross the border at low altitude in radio silence, knowing that if anything goes wrong, no rescue package is coming, and no government will admit you were there. You begin the descent and feel lift decay inside the compound air mass, a bad equation of heat, walls, weight, and rotor dynamics that gives you half a second to choose between crashing outside or forcing it inside. You put it inside. You clip the wall. You save the assault. You sit with a broken aircraft for 38 minutes, while charges are set, and history happens. You leave overloaded and watch your own bird explode into secrecy. Level 9. The ghost instructor. You stay longer than your body should allow because leaving feels harder than deployment ever did. You accumulate 2,400 flight hours, tinnitus that never stops, a spine held together by injections and habit, and a divorce finalized while you were on another continent. You miss birthdays. You miss funerals. You miss the version of yourself who could sit in a restaurant without mapping exits. You move into training because reflexes age before judgment does, and now you watch younger pilots lie to themselves with the confidence you once had. You know which ones want the patch for status. You know which ones want the work. You know which ones will quit when exhaustion strips away the story they tell about themselves. You speak little. You correct everything. You tell them brownout lies. You tell them fuel makes cruel decisions. You tell them the version never includes blood warming on a cabin floor. Level 10. The weight that stays. You still wake before dawn when no mission exists, hearing phantom altitude calls and the hollow ping of rounds striking skin you once trusted more than your own. You keep the old patch in a drawer. You keep the scars. You keep faces sorted by aircraft, by country, by who came home and who left in silence under straps and canvas. You do not explain any of it well to civilians because language breaks before the truth gets airborne. You tell people you flew helicopters. You do not tell them about compounds without names, bodies loaded in darkness, or the seconds inside dust clouds when instruments were the only thing separating purpose from impact. You carry the marriages the regiment took. You carry the men you could not wait for. You carry the bird you burned inside foreign walls. Somewhere tonight, another pilot tightens a chin strap and lowers green lenses. You know exactly what that life costs. You know it anyway. For the rest,